All right, in any event, I want to finish up on Parsha Shemos before we get to Ve'era. There's a one we had gotten to Moshe Rabbeinu starting his career. We didn't talk about that at all. So I want to there's a vital section over here, which is on page 300. So it says like this, right in the middle, about seven lines from the top. It says, Moshe hayaroa est son Yisrael chosno kohen Midian. Moshe was a shepherd. Vayina gatzon achar midbar vayovo el har Elokim choreva. Now, there's no coincidence that Moshe Rabbeinu is a shepherd, and there's no coincidence that there's no coincidence that they're chumashim. They help. Maybe give the gentleman a chumash over there. There's no coincidence, page 300, that Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no coincidence that he's a shepherd. There's no coincidence that the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were shepherds. Dovid HaMelech was a shepherd. There's no coincidence, because being a shepherd allows for two things. Number one, before anything, it actually allows for three things. It allows, number one, a demonstration of compassion. There's a demonstration of compassion. There's the medrash that Moshe Rabbeinu saw a sheep ran away, and he saw the sheep was looking for water, and he picked up the sheep, and he carried the sheep over and gave it water, that sort of thing. So there's compassion. Well, we got compassion there's compassion, number one. There's taking responsibility for a group, which is what eventually Moshe Rabbeinu is going to have to be. He's going to be a shepherd of the Jewish people. They're taking responsibility for a group. You got to watch the animals. You got to take responsibility. Number three, there's the opportunity to be alone and think, which is where these people were out. You're out with the sheep. I had a friend in high school who said he wanted to be a shepherd. That was his goal in life, to be a shepherd. He says, then he could lie in the grass and smoke grass all day. That's what that was. But that wasn't quite what that's what he said. I think he became an auto mechanic, and he smokes grass all day. But what do you call it? Then the guy wonders why his car isn't running properly. But at the end of the day, the Avos have, it's a training ground, because number one, because you're out to be, you're able to, what they call, meditate. You're able to think about what life is about, and so on and so forth. And there are even commentaries that say that it's the benefit, because in the cities they had idol worship and all sorts of contamination, various forms of spiritual contamination. So you're out in the fields, out in the wilderness with your animals, and you're not exposed to any of the improprieties of what's going on in the towns. And therefore, there's no coincidence. That's the point. It's that they're shepherds. They're shepherds for a reason. Number one. Number two, Moshe Rabbeinu, so he's out there. And then Vayera Malach Hashem Elav Belabas Eish Mitoch Hasna. An angel appears in a flame in the sneh. Vayar V'nei Hasna Boer Ba'esh. He sees the sneh is burning. V'Hasneh Einenu Ukol. It's not being consumed. So the idea of the sneh not being consumed is the idea of the Jewish people, that even though they're in Mitzrayim, but they're surviving, even though they're going all this suffering. Then the key comes over here. Vayomer Moshe. Now look at the terminology, because the terminology is very, very indicative. Vayomer Moshe Asura na. How does the art scroll translate Asura na? I will turn aside now. Right? It doesn't say Elech. It doesn't say I will go, which is normally what you would say. Look at the continuation of the pasuk. Vayomer Moshe, Asura na ve'eres amar hagodol hazeh, madua lo yivar hasneh. Moshe said, I will turn aside and go over and see why it's not burning. He sees it's burning, but it's not being consumed. Normally the wood burns especially a sneh. You would imagine a sneh, some sort of bush, is going to burn down very quickly. And this bush is just burning and nothing's happening. And Moshe says, I will turn aside. It doesn't say, let me go over and have a look at it. It says, I will turn aside. Which means that Moshe Rabbeinu was heading somewhere else. That means he was heading in this direction. He said, I have to turn to go over and see what's happening. He wasn't walking towards it anyway. He said, let me turn and go over and see what's happening. Now, one of the ideas over here is that first of all, maybe somebody needs help. I don't know what's going on over there. There's also a sign of a leader, which we already saw by Moshe Rabbeinu. When he sees the Jews getting hit, Moshe Rabbeinu gets involved. So he comes over, he goes, let's say maybe somebody needs my help over here. Asura, and I can't just walk past. You can't just say something's happening on the street, and I hear a yell. And we're not in New York over here. You hear a yell, just keep walking. They have these videos, some guy's getting beaten up, and people are just walking past. Like they're just minding. It happens all the time. What do you mean? What, something's happening? Or we get involved. You can't just walk past. Number one. Nothing against New York. I'm just telling you what the facts are. You know, well, I do. Does anybody know, by the way, what happened last night with the Giants and the Vikings? Oh, no. Oh, no, heavens, no. Are you serious? Oh, that's bad. The just ruined my day. They really won? Oh, brother. Are you serious? Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. Oh, there goes my phone call. Right? I got a guy who's going to give me some grief. When the Bears lost, the guy called me up the day after. He hadn't talked to me in a long time. All of a sudden, he called me up. He wants to find out how's the family. Yeah. I had him in my sights just now, by the way. I was thinking about it. I haven't talked to the guy in a long time. I was going to call him up. Now I'm going to have to ignore him. All right. I go, all right, the time will come. So what do you call it? I told you, when the White Sox won the World Series, so my arch nemesis from high school, right, was a White Sox fan. I happened to be in New York for a chasna a few months later. A young guy, an avrech, a kollel guy comes over to me. He says, "Are you Kaplan?" So I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'm Plony's son. My father said to say, woo, like that." Right? Talking about 20, 30 years out of high school. The guy's still giving it to me before I go, "That's okay, I got him back when the Cubs won. Don't worry." All right. So the first thing is to check, I don't know what's happening over there. Maybe somebody needs my help, number one. Number two is the idea that sometimes in life, and this is very important, and I think this is especially important for us, a person develops an approach to life. This is how I see life. This is how I live life. This is what I've established. This is my path in life. And sometimes something happens where a person says, "Ooh, you know what? I have to turn aside and check because this may even though it may throw my entire reality into disarray, I have to check what's happening here." That's why anytime a guy walks through the doors of Ohr Somayach, the first time a guy walks through the doors, I feel sorry for the guy. Listen, I walked through the doors. I never got out. I feel sorry for myself to this day. But I feel sorry for a guy who walks in at one level because this guy is about to confront something that may turn, whether or not he stays or whether he comes from, that's something else. But he's about to hear something that he's never heard in his life. And he very, very well throw his entire idea of life into disarray. And, with everything that goes with it, you got to deal with family, with changes, if you're going to make the changes, so on and so forth. But sometimes a shock to the system. And for a person, that's why the phenomenon of Balei Tshuva is generally people who are younger. Because people who are in their 20s, all right, everything they've done in life so far has been an adventure. And the more of an adventure, the better it is. The higher the cliff, the better, the more likely they are to climb it. All right, big deal. They're much more pliable. All right, we'll try some of this stuff. A shtreimel looks like fun. Why not? A guy who's 50 or 60 or 70, and he's already established that, number one, even if he in his heart of hearts realizes, something's got to change over here, but that means admitting that everything I've done up until now is a mistake. That's a very difficult thing. For a guy who's 20, you say everything I've done is a mistake. He's happy. He's like, yeah, what a mistake. Boy, was I happy about those mistakes. Those are the best mistakes I ever made. But a guy who's 50, 60, has a family. It's not so likely. I want to turn around and say he admitted his whole life's been a mistake. That's why it's very rare to find Balei Tshuvas in their 60s and 70s. You get it once in a while. There was one guy who became a Balei Tshuva, I think he was 68. Came a Balei Tshuva and made a siyum on Shas when he was 86. Wow. Yeah, never too late. It's never too late. A guy could, but you turn around. You could turn around and what do you call it? They just had an interview with one of the most virulently anti-religious personalities in Israel, who is the Supreme Court judge who basically has been the biggest antagonist of the religious world in Israel for the last 30 years. And they had an interview with him. It was the first time he granted an interview to a religious periodical. And at the end of the interview, the guy asked him if he wants to put on tefillin. And he agreed to put on tefillin. And he put on tefillin and he said Shema. And they said when he said Shema, he was tearing as he said Shema. What are those tears for? I was wondering, why is he tearing? Why is he crying? Is he's saying Kriya Shema? He hasn't said Kriya Shema. He hasn't put on tefillin in 60 years. He hasn't put on tefillin. He put on tefillin, he said Kriya Shema, and he's tearing. Why is he tearing? So I'm not sure. I don't know. But I would imagine that somewhere deep down inside, somewhere deep down inside is the sense, I really should have been doing this all along. Right? So you could push it and bury it and try to cover it up, but eventually, the truth comes out. In your heart of hearts, and generally, the harder you're fighting against it, the stronger you fight against it means that you're really trying to push something away, which you sense is very much is most likely to be the truth. So it's just a very interesting thing. So there's an idea. I once heard about this guy. People develop policies. You have a policy in life. This is our policy. So there's this guy family gets a knock on the door in the middle of dinner. So the father gets up, and it's a guy in Meshulach. He's coming around collecting for some cause or some yeshiva, whatever it is. So the father invites him in, and he sits down with the guy, and sits down for 20 minutes, and he writes him out a nice generous check, and the guy leaves. So his wife says to him, Chaim, why'd you get? You're in the middle of supper. So he says to his wife, listen, there's a halacha that you're not allowed to make an interruption in the middle of saying Kriya Shema. There's a halacha that you're not allowed to make an interruption while you're saying Shema Esrei. I don't know of any interruption that says you can't interrupt supper to help a Jew that's coming around. I don't know of any halacha that says that. Some people say, we have a policy, we don't answer the door during meal times. Right? I mean, it may be your policy, but maybe your policy is wrong. Maybe you need to review your policy. I'm not saying you obviously have to take into consideration time with the wife and kids. I don't say everybody should just, leave their family and abandon their family. But sometimes people create a policy. I have a policy. I remember, who was it? There was an actor. What was his name? Paul Newman. Right? Remember Paul Newman? Some of us remember Paul Newman. Right? Some of you never heard of Paul Newman? Tell me you never heard of Paul Newman.
Me?
You've heard of him. Of course you've heard of him. No, some of these guys. You never heard of Paul Newman? Nissim, you never heard of Paul Newman? Oh, come. Where have you guys been? When were you born? And don't answer that, right? So Paul Newman was a famous actor. So I once read, I think in Reader's Digest, that Paul Newman said when he's out with his friends, people come to ask for autographs. His line, he found the line that works is, that's something I don't do. And I remember thinking to myself, well, maybe you should do it. And maybe you should. What do you mean you don't do it? It's something I don't do. Just because you say that you don't do it doesn't mean you should. It doesn't mean it's the right policy. Maybe you should do it. Guys coming over and asking for an autograph. These are people who are paying you. They're paid to watch you on the screen. That's why you are who you are, because of these people. Maybe you should do it, right? I'm not judging Paul Newman. I'm just using him as an example. The line kind of like, that's something I don't do. I mean, can you imagine my wife asking me to do the dishes? That's something I don't do. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I tried that by the way. Not with dishes. When we were engaged. We were engaged. I said to my wife, by the way, I don't do diapers. She said to me, well, neither do I. Now what? And I did them just like the best of them. I did them, and you're going to do them too. What do you mean you don't do something you don't do? Maybe you should do it. That's my policy. So maybe your policy may be wrong. Maybe your policy is wrong. There's a Moshe Rabbeinu says, Asura now. Hey, I may have to, I know what I think, but maybe there's something else I should be thinking. And therefore, that's the second lesson. The third lesson is the next pasuk. Vayar Hashem kisar liros. Hashem sees that he's coming over to see. Vayikra level kimi toch hasne vayomer Moshe vayomer hineni. Now you notice, when does Hashem call? When does Hashem call? When he takes his steps over to see Hashem. When he approaches, then Hashem calls him out, which is also a lesson here. Now we didn't get there yet. We'll get to the shoes in a second. First, Moshe Rabbeinu approaches. When Moshe Rabbeinu approaches, then Hashem calls out. And the lesson, obviously, sometimes a person feels, I'm not inspired. I don't feel religiously inspired. Well, I also don't feel piano playing inspired. I'm not piano playing inspired. Do you know that? Well, maybe start playing piano and take some lessons and you might feel inspired. You're not going to feel inspired if you don't take the first step. First step, I'm not inspired. Of course you're not inspired. Nobody's inspired to do something you're not good at. First start. Maybe if you start, then you'll see. Someday they always tell a person who's depressed is lying in bed. Right? I'm depressed. First get up and go out, move, and then you'll see that you're not as depressed as you think you are. But you got to take the first step. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, well, let me see. Hashem says, oh, you're coming to look. Now Hashem calls out to Moshe Rabbeinu. But you got to be willing to take the first step. You got to be willing to take the first step. If you don't take the first step, nothing's going to happen, which is, by the way, why we daven. When we daven, we have to move our lips. You have to hear what you're saying. You have to daven, you have to say the words loud enough that you hear your own. Nobody else should hear you, by the way. You should disturb the person next to you. because of the idea that a person will pray in their heart. I'm religious in my heart. Ever hear people say that? All the time. You're religious in your heart. You eat breakfast in your heart also? No, you watch. Are you a sports fan in your heart only? Yeah, no. That we're very much. You play guitar in your heart, right? No. That we do actively. You're religious in your heart. Be a heart. I'm not interested in your heart. We're just seeing what you do. Then after you're doing it, then on Rahman Aliba Boy, Hashem wants the heart. It doesn't say He only wants the heart. It says, Rahman Aliba Boy, when we're doing what we're doing, we have to do it with our heart. So I tell you, Yiddishkeit should not be mechanical. Got to be automatic, but not mechanical. It means it's automatic that in the morning I'm going to shul. But while I'm in shul, it should be mechanical. It's automatic that I'm going to put on tefillin, but I don't put it on mechanically. It's automatic, and with other activities, it's certainly like it's automatic that I'm going to eat lunch. And it's certainly not mechanical. And it's certainly not, especially if it's fleischicks, right? It's certainly not mechanical. Tuna fish, okay. But if it's fleischicks, nobody ever ate ribs mechanically, right? No, mechanical ribs, right? It's not going to be mechanical. Yiddishkeit should be automatic. It's automatic that I'm going to do it. But when I do it, what I do should not be mechanical. It shouldn't be just going through the motions. Davening, it's not enough to daven in your heart. Because if you daven in your heart, you'll daven once, twice, that's it. That's it. When you daven and you actually say the words, then the davening actually has an effect on us and inspires us to want to daven more. And it's very much like any activity in life. The more you do something, I don't know if any of you guys played, I've used this example before, you play musical, anybody here play a musical instrument? Yeah. What do you play? Violin. How was it in the beginning? There's no description of Gehenna that can measure what you must have gone through in the beginning of playing violin.
Actually, one time I went into the lowest orchestra in my school. It was like the beginners. I did not want to leave quicker. It was like
it's right. The beginning is Gehenna, right? And not only for you, for anybody who's got to listen to you, right? Nothing worse than listening to somebody practice violin who's not good at it. Right? The only thing worse is a kid who's learning to play drums. Right, which we had across the street from us, right? That's also. But when you start getting better at it, then you develop a taste for it. Like anything.
It was like one time he was like, actually, that wasn't bad. After I started practicing, after 3 years, he was like, you know what, I could tolerate this now.
And after 3 years, you talk about parental mesiras nefesh. 3 years of listening to a kid scraping a violin. My goodness, I wouldn't have sold the violin. I would have sold the kid. Says, what do you call you? I don't say get rid of the violin. I say get rid of the kid. Well, get this kid out of here. What's it going to be next after the violin? So davening is the same thing. You got to go through it. You can't daven in your heart. I told you I met a girl. I knew a girl who became a balas tshuva. So her father is a very, very well-to-do man, and she's a single daughter. Is very well. She's married, long married, guys. She's a single daughter. Is very well-to-do man. And I knew the guy. The guy wasn't very religious. And I asked his daughter if your father ever contemplated, getting involved in Yiddishkeit. She said he did once. He made a trip to Israel, and he said if he feels a spiritual awakening, then he'll investigate further. Right. So he came to Israel, and he went to Eilat, in Netanya, and Tel Aviv, and somehow he didn't feel a spiritual awakening, right? So he never went further. So he still only plays golf. That's his thing is golf. What happened? No spiritual awakening. That was it. Now he's got the fancy excuse. So if his friends ever say to him, "Hey Ralph, how come you never moved religiously?" I was in Israel and I never felt the spiritual awakening. Somehow he didn't end up in Ohr Somayach. Isn't that interesting? No. Netanya, yeah, but not Ohr Somayach. That he didn't end up in. So he says, take the first step. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vayomer al tikrav halom. And I want you guys to listen carefully because it's so packed. Vayomer al tikrav halom. Don't come here. Don't come near. Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Take off your feet. You're standing on holy soil. So don't come near, take off your shoes. Now, the first idea here is the plain meaning. You're on holy soil, you've been around sheep all day, right? Take off your shoes. I don't know what you got on your shoes. The shoes have all sorts of goop on them. Who knows what's on shoes? Take off your shoes, they're on holy soil. And everybody knows that in the Beis Hamikdash, the Kohanim wear very, very elaborate outfits, very elaborate uniforms, but no shoes. They walked around in bare feet. Interesting. We're very fancy. if you ever want to try something that feels really weird, put on your fanciest Shabbos suit and tie, dress yourself up, and don't put on shoes. Wear a 3-piece suit, wear a 2-piece suit with a nice tie and cufflink and everything, and don't put on shoes. It's a really strange feeling. A really strange feeling. Something's missing here. You can walk around. Something is missing. So if you're what do you call it? If you're I was once in the shuk years ago. I was in the shuk, say in the Arab shuk in here. So I ran into this Arab guy. This Arab guy, he's wearing like a really sharp, looks like an Italian suit, and really sharp shoes, no socks. Right? And I just remember, something about that. That's just not, you can't do that. That doesn't work. That just does not work. I'm not a fashion expert, but that is not going to make it into GQ. You can't be without socks. You could wear sandals and shorts, if you're working on a kibbutz with no socks, right? Not if you're wearing a 3-piece suit with alligator shoes. Because socks got to go with the uniform. So in the base of English, the Kohanim were without socks, and they're wearing really, really fancy threads without socks. What's the idea here? So the first idea is obviously the shoes have, even, who is it that takes off their, the Muslims take off their shoes when they go into, what do you call it?
And the Buddhists also.
Buddhists also take off shoes. Everybody understands, it's almost, touching your shoes are dirty. Everybody understands shoes are dirty. We know that in halacha, if you touch your shoes, you got to wash your hands. Right? If you touch your shoes, you got to wash your hands because the shoes are assumed to be there's dirt on the shoes. Okay. There are several other ideas here. Idea number one is that there are 4 levels in the hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of 4 levels in the world itself. There is the inanimate, which is the earth. There is plant life, which grows on the earth. There's animals, which eat plants. And on top of that is human beings, which eat animals. Some of the commentaries count it as 5. That there are Jews besides the regular human beings. There are 5. Well, listen, Yonasan, were you at a Friday night meal? Were you at a Friday night meal this week?
No, I'm here at the yeshiva. Yeah.
Here at the yeshiva.
Okay.
Did anybody make kiddush?
Nope.
Nobody made kiddush a Friday night? That was funny. Did anybody you heard somebody made kiddush, right? You've been to a Shabbos where somebody made kiddush?
Yes.
Have you ever protested?
No.
Okay, what does he say when he makes kiddush? Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, who has chosen us from all people. Right? And he says it in public. And I've never been at a Shabbos where anybody's protested. Right? And then we say at Havdalah, who is divided, we are as different as light and darkness. Right? So we say it unabashedly, we are the chosen people. Not only that, they say we're the chosen people. We've been killed for saying it, but we all know it. So that we have no problem with. So there are 5 levels according to some. Not that I said I know what 3. I said that humans eat animals, and then there's Jews on top. It doesn't mean Jews eat other humans. No. We're not. I didn't mean that. At least not without a bracha. You may go. You just say Borei Pri Ha'adam. No. I didn't mean that. What I meant was that in the higher, whatever, we'll call it 4. Okay, now. Plants feed on animals. Plants grow on the earth, animals feed on the plants, and human beings feed on the animals. When a person is in the presence of God, that means a human being wearing shoes. Where do shoes come from? Shoes come from animals. Shoes come from animals. Some come from flowers, right? Or plants. What do you call it? What's it called? Canvas, that sort of thing. But most shoes come from leather. Most shoes come from leather, which means it comes from. When a human being is standing in a shoe, symbolically, what he's doing is, on the lowest part of his body is the next highest level in that hierarchy. That means I'm standing on the rest of the world. I dominate, my shoes show that I dominate the world, which a human being does, right? Even the biggest liberals in the world have no problem killing a bug if it's bothering them. Maybe that bug is in the process of evolving, according to them, and one day that bug will be a fish, will then turn into a monkey and turn into a human being, right? And then turn into a liberal. It could be that there's a process of evolution over here, but they have no problem killing the bug, and they have no problem. Many liberals have no problem eating a good thick steak either, right? So we'll set that aside. The bottom line is, when I'm standing in my shoes, it looks like I am dominating the entire creation, the entire hierarchy of creation. When you're in the presence of God, you want to show that you dominate nothing. In the presence of God, there's total submission. So I take off your shoes. You're in the Beis Hamikdash, full contact with the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, total submission to God. Obviously, you're standing on the world, right? So you're dominating, but we can't crawl in. So that's what we do. At the end of the day, that's why, by the way, in the Beis Hamikdash, they had a room that they kept warmed up. There was this, the Beis Hamoked, where they kept the fire burning, so that the Kohanim who are walking on the cold marble floor could go in there and warm up their feet. And you can see a couple of these old Kohanim going into the, oh, that feels so good, warming up their feet, made a glezel tea. So you can see, but they had, because they're walking around on a marble floor. They're walking around on a marble floor. So so the removal of the shoe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Shalna alecha me'al raglecha, you're on holy soil now. In the presence of God, there's no symbolic domination. There's total submission. Okay? Number 3, we mentioned once, Shalna alecha. Remember what's the root of the word na'al? No, which is what?
Lock.
A lock. Man'ul in Hebrew is a lock. A man'ul is a lock on a door. Na'al, the root of the word na'al, which is where the word comes from, because if there's one part of our garment that we lock onto ourselves, it's our shoes, right? You either tie them on or you buckle them on, right? The shoe is, we even use an expression, boy, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes, right? And you're in your shoes, you're very much in your shoes. Nobody says, I wouldn't want to be in his shirt. Right, when a guy's in the principal office, a guy's in trouble, a guy's being stopped by a cop, or he's in court. Everybody says, I don't want to be in his shoes. Nobody says, I wouldn't want to be in his shirt. Right? Nobody, I wouldn't want to be in his coat. And you say, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. That's where somehow the shoe is man'ul. It's very much strongly fastened to our body. Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to come close. You're on holy soil. You know how you do that? Remove all those behaviors, all of those habits that you're locked into, that have become part of you, that are trapping you, which we all have. Everybody's got something about them that needs a little bit of help. Everybody's got something about them that they're trapped by. The guy says, I have anger. It's a common expression nowadays. I have anger. You have anger? Do you know anybody who doesn't? Have you ever met a human being that doesn't have any anger? Every human being gets angry. The fact that you have anger means you have an urge. Getting angry is an urge. You have an urge to yell. You have an urge to explode. Like all urges, it has to be controlled. And like any character trait that we have, if a person works on it, they'll improve. The idea nowadays, a person says, I have anger, makes it almost sound like a justification. It's not my fault. Not my fault. I have anger. Oh, you're unique. I have anger. It's like the other guy said, I have theft. Right? And it's not my fault. I take things. I'm a kleptomaniac. I have theft. What do you mean? I have idol worship. What is that? No such thing. You have urges, and urges are meant to be controlled. We're locked, often trapped into our urges. We're trapped by our urges. We're not trapped. It's doable. Person has to be willing to work on it. Person has to be willing to try to break out of it. Person has to be willing to put some effort into it. That nowadays, these are the fancy 21st century excuses for behaving out of control. Is I have this, I have anger. Oh, you have anger, control yourself. So a guy cut you off in traffic, therefore you got to get out and shoot him? Because I have anger. I have anger. It's not my fault. I have anger. Well, don't have anger. Work on it. And I have, what do you call it? I have selfishness. Therefore, that justifies everything. I don't have to think about anybody else have self. So don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. That's what the Torah is. Remove it. We all got our areas that need work. We all have our areas that we feel trapped. You're not trapped. It's doable. The first step in growth. Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. The word regel is related to the Hebrew word hergel. Hergel is habit. Hergel is habit. And the connection between regel and hergel is just like your feet move in a steady pattern. Your feet move in a steady direction. Hergel, a habit, moves you in a steady direction. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Remove your shoes from, remove those locks from your habits. That's the idea. The fourth idea here is that the shoes are physicality. And we're trapped by physicality because we're human beings. Human beings are physical. And we're trapped by physicality. We're drawn by the physicality. We're not priests. There's no such thing in Judaism as what's it called?
Monks?
There's one word, the general word for it. What, asceticism? It doesn't. The material, the physical material world. If you've been at a Shabbos table, there's no asceticism. Right? Cholt is not for ascetics, right? It's like, we're not. We're very, very much into the physical world, but not that the physical world should be guiding us, should be driving us. We should be using the physical world. It's not to avoid and neglect. A nazir is called a chote. A nazir is called a sinner because he took a vow of abstinence from wine. What are you vowing off of life's pleasures for? Who told you to vow off? Nobody said to vow off. We said you should control yourself. A person who's out of control sometimes has to do what a nazir does. A person who's out of control says, you know what? No wine for 30 days because he feels that the wine is dominating him. A person who's a little bit out of control says, you know what? No Pepsi for 30 days. Chas v'sholom, right? A person says, no, you know what? I'm doing this too much. No violin for 30 days. It's dominating me, right? And everybody in the room says, oh, could we go? Do I hear 60? Depending on how good you are, right? At the end of the day, the physical world is not something we abstain from. But if you want to grow, shal na'alecha, the shoe is the most physical part of our garment, and it connects us to the physical world. Shal na'alecha, get rid of the physicality. Trim down on the physicality, cut down on the physicality a little bit. That's the way if you want to be on holy soil. And now the most important point of all. By the way, the Brisker Rav, you've heard of the Brisker Rav, right? So he was a guest at somebody's house for Shabbos. I made a bracha before. He was a guest at somebody's house for Shabbos. So he had to go to Mincha. So he asked his host, he was on a very, very limited diet. He said to the hostess, when I come back from Mincha, maybe I could have an apple and a banana. I was more than happy to serve the Brisker Rav. So he comes back from Shul, and after Mincha, she sits down, there's a nice apple and a banana on the table, and the Brisker Rav is sitting there, and he doesn't touch it. So at a certain point, the hostess said, I noticed you asked for an apple and a banana. He said, yeah. I noticed you have an issue. She's nervous, Brisker, what could be treif about my apple? What did I do wrong over here? When I touched it, what you don't say, the apples that a woman touched, I mean, what happened? What can it possibly be? She says to the Brisker Rav, I noticed you didn't eat the apple or the banana. He goes, yeah. He goes, you're not hungry? He goes, She goes, what is it? He goes, look, I keep track, and every day we're supposed to make 100 brachas. And I was a couple of brachas short. And I keep track. There are actually people who do that. They know how many brachas. I was keeping track of how many brachas where I'm holding in my brachas, and I was 2 brachas short. So I decided when I come back from Shul, I'll have an apple and a banana. I'll get my quota. But then in Shul, I got an aliyah. So when I got an aliyah, I made the 2 brachas. So I don't need the apple or the banana. I stop and think about it and say, well, what's one thing got to do with the other? The answer is because we eat apples when we want apples. I don't say, hey, please pass the bracha. I say, please pass the apple, or the lemon meringue pie, as the case may be. Oh, you know what? I only eat lemon meringue pie because I want to make brachas. I need 3 pieces to make sure that it's a good bracha, right? That's why I'm eating the lemon meringue pie. Well, not quite. So a person who understands that's what the physical world is for. And when you eat the apple, you should enjoy the apple. But let's keep it in a proper perspective. Each person at their level, by the way. We're not the Brisker Rav. Maybe you are, I'm not. I'm not the Brisker Rav. These are only ideals where a person can reach. But if the Brisker Rav was like that with an apple, we could apply it to ourselves when it comes to chocolate cream pie. Right? That means I'm not the Brisker Rav, and I can't live like the Brisker Rav. But I could apply it when I'm out of control, when it comes to something that I'm a little out of control with. Right? I've seen people eating sushi, right? I think like this is the last meal they're ever going to have. I remember the guys I was in the yeshiva, so there was a guy in the yeshiva whose father owned a fish store. So this guy knew how to make sushi. So he made a siyum on a masechta, and he bought fresh fish, fresh rice, and what's that other thing that they wrap it around? What's that called? Seaweed, yeah, shkoyach. Yeah, seaweed, right? Seaweed. The whole world's eating seaweed today. So he goes and he made 800 pieces of sushi. The rest of the day, guys in the yeshiva were walking around, hey, Yitzi, how many did you have? 24. I had 31. And they're talking about how many pieces of sushi they had. Right? It's like, okay, I'm not the brisker of, but 12 would be good too. I have to go up there in triple digits. That's triple digits of sushi. So each person at his level, to trim down the physicality. That's okay. Now, the last idea, and I think that this is the one that really hits home the most for us, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look at the words again. He says, Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha, take off your ki ha'mokom asher ta'omed olav, ve'yomer al tikrav, olam, don't come near. Take your shoes off your feet, ki ha'mokom asher ta'omed olav admas kodeshi. You're standing on holy soil. Gentlemen, honestly and truly, has it ever crossed your mind, wow, if I would have been born in Bnei Brak to a sixth generation Bnei Brak family, everything would be so different. I know all the Mishnayos already, and I know a lot more Torah, and I wouldn't be allowed. Ever cross your mind? Ever cross your mind the what do you call it? Boy, why did I have to only find out about this when I was 24 or 26 or 33? Why couldn't I have found out about all this before? Right? Says the Torah, Al tikrav halom. You don't have to come over here. Right where you are is Admas Kodesh. You're standing on holy soil already. Person, you don't have to get to here. You don't have to be over here. You weren't born in Lakewood, and you weren't born. Maybe you were. You weren't born in Bnei Brak or in Baranovich. Wherever you were born and whatever your life circumstances are, right now you're on holy soil. If this is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you, obviously that's your job in life. And if he wanted you to do a different job, and I could prove to you he doesn't. You know what the proof is? Because you're not there. If he wanted you to be there, he would have put you there. And if he put you in these circumstances, then all he expects you to do is do the best you can with those circumstances. And if that's, so the idea, but if I would have been born over there and I would have had that Rabbi and I've been in that yeshiva and I would have been in yeshiva all my life, all I'd speak is Aramaic and I, what do you call it? My worst crime would be benching too fast. One second, hold it, slow down. But maybe the guy who was in that situation, if he was in your situation, he gets a shmettered. He doesn't have what you've got, and he wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you where you are because he knows that you could do it. Will you do it? That's your job. But don't think that unless I'm there, so I'm missing the boat. No. I'll tikrav alone. Don't have to come closer. Where you are right now is Admas Kodesh. You're on holy soil right now. That's your job. That's a life lesson for us, gentlemen. Person sometimes gets caught up in, maybe I should be here and doing this and doing that. This is what you're doing. These are your life circumstances. These are your abilities and capabilities. That's obviously what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you. That's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks. Okay, we'll stop here. I'll get my voice rest.